You're watching this video, so the chances are great that you enjoy what we create here at the Audrain. And if you do, why not take the next step and subscribe to this channel? You might also consider a membership in the Audrain Automobile Museum. We mount 4 new exhibitions each year featuring cars from the Audrain collections and loans from some of the leading collectors and institutions around the world. Click here to find out more. Hi, and welcome back to our exhibition JDM and Beyond, the worldwide influence of Japanese automobiles here at the Audrain Automobile Museum. However, today we're not talking about automobiles, but motorcycles. And who else to talk with us about motorcycles than our resident motociclista himself, Antonio Melegari.
You know I like motorcycles, Donald.
Indeed, and in fact, you've never, ever missed an opportunity to delete 2 wheels and add speed.
Deleting 2 wheels and adding speed sounds like a great idea to me. That's the best way to do it, for sure.
And that's what we have here with these 3 very carefully selected motorcycles for this exhibition. It's really interesting because we've spoken a lot in these segments and in the introduction to this exhibition about how technology has been really mastered by Japanese manufacturers to really bring the best out of every category of vehicle. And these certainly exemplify that to a T. In chronological order, we've got a 1972 Kawasaki H2 750. We've got a 1983 Honda
CX650 Turbo.
Easy for you to say. And a 2003
Suzuki Hayabusa.
And it's really interesting because each of these motorcycles has certainly one thing in common and probably 3 things in common. Let's start with the obvious one. What's your favorite thing?
Speed.
Exactly. And let's talk about the Kawasaki and what it represented in its time.
Well, it was the 750. It really started as a 500 and 500cc 2-stroke. You look at all of the famous MotoGP racing with 500cc 2-stroke bikes. And they said, you know, the 500's probably not fast enough, so let's make it a 750cc 2-stroke motorcycle, which is absolutely insane. I've been very lucky to ride the Hayabusa and the Honda CX 650. I haven't ridden the Kawasaki 750 yet.
Not brave enough, are you?
No, I think I'm brave enough to ride it, but it's one of those things where it's like, you don't know if you want to meet your heroes or not, because it's such a legendary bike, and you hear all the horror stories of when people rode them and then they would get tank slappers. And you did a video when we had balance of power on 2 wheels, when we did the entire motorcycle exhibition in here, and Chuck Gilchrist, one of our great volunteers and who helps here in the museum, he had this great line that he said, you would really want to hope that when you get to 4,000 or 5,000 RPM, when you accelerate, that you're pointed in the direction that you want to go in, or else something bad could happen. But yeah, I mean, it was a crazy fast bike for the time.
And this is something too that a lot of people don't think about, because you think about sort of subsets of competition and what they represent in terms of vehicles. There are not a lot of people that are very familiar with drag bikes. And this rather unassuming to the naked eye bike was an absolute king of the drag strip.
Oh yeah, yeah. People would elongate the rear swing arm, and then they would be absolute monsters on the drag strip. They were very, very fast.
And you know, one of the things that it's known for, you know, one of its fearsome characteristics is lifting the front wheel. So you have a drag bike that you put all the power down and the front wheel lifts. That's sort of a recipe for leaving you back at the staging lights.
Yeah, kind of counterintuitive. Yeah, you definitely would have had to keep all of your weight over the front end, and people would modify them so that it wouldn't be as abrupt when the front wheel came up. But yeah, deadly to ride.
And technologically also, a 3-cylinder with 3 carburetors, and so, you know, it's the idea is ultimate efficiency in the production of power.
Oh yeah, and you look at the power to weight ratio of it with the 2-stroke motor. There are less components in the engine, and it's lighter, and they can build a powerful, lighter machine. I mean, ultimately with two-strokes, they dominated the MotoGP championship, and they were still racing two-strokes up until 2002. 2001 was the last official year of two-stroke racing, and then 2002 was a weird, like, blended hybrid year. But what's sad about it, I mean, I grew up riding a Yamaha YZ125, which it's either you're either fully on or you're off. There's no in between. It's just like, to the dismay of the neighbors. But ultimately, with the emissions, the EPA kind of nixed all of the two strokes, and the motorcycles eventually all became four-stroke, and now we're starting to see electric, and that's a total different conversation. But
let's go to a cultural issue, and also the influence on the market that Japanese motorcycles had as well. In the early 1970s, motorcycles in the US were still really thought of as the province of the British bikes,
Yep.
Harley Davidson. I mean, that's what people thought of as a motorcycle. The idea, oh,
Yep.
you're gonna have this 500cc or 750cc two-stroke, what's that all about?
yeah,
And also, talk about, we saw in a previous segment the impact that the Honda trail bikes had,
Yep.
and their entire marketing campaign. This is really the time also when Japanese motorcycles really sort of took front and center in public consciousness, wasn't it?
oh yeah. I mean, they totally took the world by storm, and it wasn't just your typical BSA or a Harley, and I think people really saw the value of the Japanese bikes because they were really reliable, they were fast, they looked good. I mean, 3 different bikes. Okay, yes, this is from our age now in the 2000s, but you know, beautiful mix of colors, and they looked really good. I mean, it's a fantastic blue on the 750, and it was an additional option for people to choose from, and they really started to take a hold of that, and they were taking the U.S. market by storm. And I think I know where you're going with this, how there were certain American motorcycle manufacturers that were getting a little frustrated with how much the Japanese were taking control of the motorcycle market.
Yeah, and we'll really see that with the next motorcycle that we're going to feature, which is this extraordinary, I loved when I was reading about this motorcycle. First of all, we joked before we started rolling that we're not quite sure if this power plant on the motorcycle is actually a turbocharged one, because you don't have any hints anywhere on the motorcycle. It couldn't be, you know, like on the exhaust pipe, on the engine itself, on the on the fairing, the side, on the front fairing, but clearly they wanted to make a statement that this was something different.
Yeah.
And the other thing, which is very Antonio about this, is the fact that the motorcycle on which this was based, before they put the turbo on, it doubled the power and made it way less. What could go wrong?
Yeah, I know. It's a great combo. No, I mean, a similar story to the Kawasaki. These started as 500s, and then they only made the 650 in '83, so it was a single year bike. But Harley Davidson, and you know, I'm not the biggest Harley guy, but Harley Davidson was getting frustrated that there were these larger displacement Japanese motorcycles that people were buying, and they weren't necessarily buying a larger displacement Harley. They were buying like the 750 behind you and other similar bikes. So they basically went to the government, and the government imposed a tariff on the Japanese bikes that were above 700cc.
Well, we also have to add here, in defense of Harley Davidson and their management, there was some talk that the Japanese motorcycles were selling for less in the U.S. than they sold for in their home market in Japan.
Yeah,
there were reasons for that in terms of equipment and taxation and all that. But nonetheless, that was sort of the reason given for
I love the drama of
tariffs.
it all, Donald. I gotta play into the drama. I think it's great.
There was plenty of drama, God knows.
So Honda basically said, okay, game on. So they took the engine, they increased the displacement, and they brought it up to 650cc, which the regular bike would have had about 50 horsepower. They added a turbo to it and a bunch of turbo decals. Like you said, doubled the horsepower. So they were able to bring the bike into the States, and they weren't affected by the tariff, but they had a motorcycle that was lighter and faster and 100 horsepower for 1983. And I've ridden this bike. It's pretty calm, and then it gets to the point where the turbo kicks in, and you get this rush of power. And it's really exciting to ride. It's really fun. I love it. It's awesome.
I will bet, in the 1980s, driving turbo cars was exciting enough because we're so used to turbos today, especially twin turbo setups where you're not even aware that the car is turbocharged, just this instant power from the lowest part of the range up to the top of the range. But back then, it really was a matter of, 3, 2, 1, turbo! And so, you had to be ready.
Yeah, and it's got it on the dashboard. There's this great, I don't know if you can see it from here, but when it gets into the when the turbo spools up and the turbo is activated, I think there's a graphic or something on the dash. It's really, really cool. It's great.
It is one of those things that, again, the Japanese absolutely excel in. And one of the things, again, we talked about design, and one of the things that is emblematic of all Japanese car design is surface interest. So it's not surprising that Honda decorated this motorcycle the way they did. And I think it's actually really neat. It's very much of the period.
Yeah.
And it's, you can just see someone in a really 80s outfit riding this motorcycle.
I mean, it screams the period, and they very much wanted to make a statement with this bike. They wanted to basically say, hey, here we are, this is what we can do. And I think it's a great story.
And speaking of making statements, Hayabusa. And one of the things that, it's just so much fun to say, Hayabusa.
Which means Peregrine Falcon in Japanese,
And why Peregrine Falcon?
Well, it's quite fast. It's a very fast bird.
It is indeed the champion dive bomber among avians. Can reach somewhere around 150 or 160 miles per hour on a downward dive.
Yeah, it's insane.
And so this is a remarkable motorcycle, and I know that it really sort of fits within your idea of both performance and aesthetic, because you like these motorcycles that I think show their speed while on a stand.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like the Honda, where Suzuki really wanted to be bold in their design, and it was a little controversial when it came out. Some people really liked it, other people didn't, but they did a really good job of making a statement, and it looks like it's going 200 miles an hour just standing still, and they have a great road presence when they come down the road, that's for sure.
And 200 miles per hour, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Just again, the concept, you are a motorcyclist. You love it. You love the feeling of speed, even when you're in, as he always is properly dressed for speed riding, in his leathers and his helmet. And you are familiar with speeds like this on the track.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those things, this is not a track motorcycle.
No.
So what kinds of speeds would you actually sort of use this on a regular street? Perhaps, well, knowing that none of the members of the local state police are watching the Audrain Museum Network at this moment, and if they are, did I tell you that his name is John Smith? Mr. John Smith. Yes,
Mr. Smith. Yep.
Exactly. So, Mr. Smith.
'Tis I.
I mean, what kind of speed could you safely use this motorcycle on a road?
I mean, I've had it on a closed course.
Mm-hmm. Professional driver.
Probably about 100. I mean, but these can go much faster. When these came out in the late 90s, the first version of it could do 197 miles an hour top speed, which was totally unheard of. Speed like that would have been achieved in Grand Prix motorcycle racing, but to have a motorcycle that you could go to the dealership and, compared to the price of a car, I could say most working people could probably afford something like that, was totally insane. And people were attempting to reach the top speed, and having personally gone close to 200 miles an hour on a motorcycle at the racetrack, there's a lot that can go wrong at that
very
speed.
quickly.
You know, you drive a car, you have your nice box, you're totally safe, you have a seatbelt, not so much on a bike. So unfortunately, people were getting injured and dying on them. So there was kind of a gentleman's agreement that was placed on most of the major motorcycle manufacturers to basically cut the speedo off or only have the speedo go to 185. Now the difference between 185 and 197, not much difference there, but so the winded answer to your question is it could basically do 200 miles an hour, which is insane.
And in terms of the balance and handling of this motorcycle, how do you think it works as a package in terms of the available performance and the way you can use it at legal speeds?
It's pretty heavy. These weighed almost 600 pounds. You know, I would prefer something in the high 300s to 400s. But when you're riding it, the first 5 miles an hour might seem a little cumbersome, but once you kind of get used to the weight on the front end, it actually rides really nice, and it's very, very smooth. If you're gentle with your inputs, you can ride it normally and you can ride it at the speed limit, and it's not like totally trying to kill you like the Kawasaki would once you got into the power band. So riding it normally, it's actually a really nice bike, and it's also comfortable. I mean, they designed it to kind of be this like sport
tourer,
super sport tourer,
yeah.
I would call it. I think that would be appropriate. And I think it's worked because they're still making the Hayabusa today. I think they're in their third or their fourth generation, and I mean it's been produced for over 25 years. I mean, so they're clearly doing something right, and I think that the public still really enjoys these bikes. And
what is so wonderful about these three motorcycles, as we said before, the way they help to tell that story that we've been telling throughout the exhibition of the way technology is applied to vehicles to bring them to the next level.
Yeah.
Things that other manufacturers either wouldn't try or didn't think of trying or wouldn't dare try.
Yeah.
We see in these three motorcycles.
For sure.
And it's one of the reasons why, seemingly from nowhere, but it's you know, the Japanese manufacturers became overnight sensations in 3 decades.
Yeah.
And you know, you can see why with these three motorcycles. And they are absolute proof positive of the worldwide influence of Japanese vehicles around the world, not just automobiles, but motorcycles as well. Thanks so much, Antonio. We'll see you again later.
Thank you. Subscribe.
Subscribe. Subscribe now.